You're sitting on the couch. The TV is on. Nothing important is happening. And yet, for the fourth time in 10 minutes, your hand drifts toward your phone. You unlock it. You scroll for a few seconds. Nothing new. You lock it again. You probably think this is a modern habit, a flaw of the digital age. But the real answer is far stranger. This behavior is not new at all. It's ancient, and it was once the difference between living and dying. To understand why your thumb moves toward that phone almost on its own, you have to go back. Not a few decades, not a few centuries, hundreds of thousands of years, to a time before language, before fire was reliable, before anything resembling a home existed. Back then, your ancestors lived in small, scattered groups on open land. Every day was a negotiation with uncertainty. Where is the food? Where are the predators? Has anything changed since yesterday? The world was not a stable backdrop. It was a constantly shifting puzzle, and survival depended on solving it again and again. So the brain developed a habit, a compulsion, almost. It became obsessed with checking the horizon, checking the tree line, checking who was nearby, who had moved, who was missing. This wasn't anxiety in the way we think of it today. It was maintenance. It was the brain's way of keeping its internal map of the world up to date. And updating that map felt good. Each small check, each little piece of new information triggered a tiny reward in the brain, a flicker of dopamine. Not because the information was always useful, but because the act of checking itself was valuable. An organism that checked its environment frequently was less likely to be surprised by a predator, less likely to miss an opportunity, less likely to be caught off guard by a change in its social group. Over hundreds of thousands of years, this checking behavior became wired in, not as a choice, as a default state. Now fast forward to today. Your phone has become the horizon, the tree line, the social group. Every notification, every red dot, every unread message is a tiny piece of the world has changed. And your brain, the same brain your ancestors carried across savannas and through ice ages, still responds to that signal exactly the way it always has. It checks. It gets a flicker of reward. It checks again. This is where researchers started to take notice. In the 1950s, a neuroscientist named James Olds, along with Peter Milner, ran an experiment with rats. They implanted electrodes into a part of the rat's brain associated with reward and gave the rats a lever. Press it, and they'd receive a small electrical stimulation to that reward center. The rats pressed the lever. Then they pressed it again. Then they kept pressing it, sometimes thousands of times an hour, ignoring food, ignoring water, ignoring everything else, just to get that small hit of stimulation. Why does this matter to you? Because your phone runs on the same circuitry. Not literally, of course, but functionally. Every time you check it and find something new, even something small, your brain registers it the same way those rats registered the lever press. A reward. A reason to do it again. But here's the part that makes this even stranger. The rats didn't press the lever constantly. The pattern of pressing was uneven. Sometimes fast bursts, sometimes pauses. And this unevenness wasn't a flaw in the experiment. It was the result of something psychologists later identified as one of the most powerful forces in behavior: unpredictability. In the 1950s and 60s, a psychologist named B.F. Skinner studied how rewards shape behavior using pigeons and levers of his own. He discovered that if a reward came every single time an action was performed, the behavior would be steady, but it would also fade quickly once rewards stopped. But if the reward came unpredictably, sometimes after one press, sometimes after 10, sometimes not at all, the behavior became almost impossible to stop. The animal would keep pressing, again and again, chasing the possibility of a reward that might or might not come. This is called a variable ratio reinforcement schedule, and it is, by a wide margin, the most powerful pattern for creating compulsive behavior. Think about your phone again. Sometimes you check it and there's something exciting, a message from someone you like, good news, something funny. Other times there's nothing, just an empty screen, an old notification, nothing new at all. You never know which one it will be. And that uncertainty is the engine. Your brain isn't checking because it expects something good every time. It's checking because it might be good this time. The possibility is enough. This is the same mechanism that makes slot machines so effective. Pull the lever, and most of the time, nothing happens. But every so often, something does. And that occasional payout is enough to keep people pulling the lever for hours. Your phone is a lever. Your notifications are the payout. And your checking behavior is the pulling. But there's another layer to this, one that goes even deeper into your evolutionary past. For your ancestors, information about other people wasn't just interesting. It was essential. Living in small groups meant survival depended on cooperation, on alliances, on knowing who you could trust and who might turn against you. A researcher named Robin Dunbar proposed that this is part of why human brains grew so large compared to other primates. Tracking social relationships, who is friends with whom, who is upset with whom, who has more status than they did yesterday, required enormous cognitive resources. Dunbar suggested that gossip itself, the sharing of social information, served the same bonding function that grooming serves in other primates. In other words, knowing what's happening with other people isn't a distraction from survival. For most of human history, it was survival. Now look at what's on your phone. Messages from friends, updates from people you know, photos, comments, reactions. It's an endless stream of social information, the exact kind of information your brain evolved to crave. So when you check your phone, you're not just checking for a reward, you're checking your social world. Who's doing what? Who responded? Who didn't? Your brain treats this information as critically important, because for almost all of human history, it was. Here's where it gets even stranger. In the wild, this checking behavior had natural limits. There was only so much new information available at any given moment. The horizon doesn't change every few seconds. The social group doesn't update in real time. Once your ancestors checked their environment and found nothing new, the urge to check again would fade, at least for a while. But your phone doesn't have those limits. It can produce an almost endless stream of something has changed signals. New posts, new messages, new videos, new information, all day, every day, with no natural stopping point. Your brain, the ancient brain, has no built-in defense against this. It evolved in a world where checking was rare and valuable. It was never designed for a world where checking is constant and nearly limitless. This is part of what some researchers, including those studying behavioral design, refer to as a mismatch. The environment has changed dramatically. The brain has not. And in that gap between an ancient checking instinct and a modern infinite stream of triggers, compulsive phone use is born. It's not a failure of willpower. It's not a character flaw. It's an old survival mechanism operating exactly as designed in an environment it was never built for. So the next time your hand drifts toward your phone for no particular reason, when nothing is wrong, when you're not expecting any specific message, consider what's actually happening. That's not a modern habit. That's hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary history, quietly running in the background, checking the horizon for any sign that the world has changed. You're sitting on the couch. The TV is on. Nothing important is happening. And once again, your hand drifts towards your phone. It always will, because somewhere deep in your brain, it's still scanning the tree line.